Voice of San Diego podcasts are made possible in part by Downtown San Diego Partnership, a member-based nonprofit organization that's the leading advocate for the economic vitality and growth of downtown San Diego. Resolutions are so last year. 2018 is about setting intentions, and there's no better place to set your intention than in a yoga class under the clear blue San Diego sky. Join the Downtown Partnership and Yoga One for free yoga classes this month, brought to you by Scripps Health, Saturdays at 9 a.m. in downtown San Diego's Pantoja Park. Visit downtownsandiego.org today to sign up.
They didn't give us an option to go away or to close up shop or to just quit. They seemed like they were out for blood. I don't know if, given 6 or 12 months into the trial, in this lawsuit, if they had said, hey, we'll let you go free and clear if you just go out of business and leave us alone. I don't know if we would have taken that or not. We were terrified.
Welcome to I Made It in San Diego, Voice of San Diego's podcast about the stories behind the region's businesses, the big and the small, and the people who made them what they are. I'm Kinsey Moreland, and in this week's show, a story about Mike Glanz, CEO of Hire a Helper, a web-based moving business in Oceanside. When the Hire a Helper website first launched back in 2007, most people were either renting their own trucks and doing the work themselves or with the help of friends, or they were hiring a full-service moving company and paying them thousands of dollars to do everything. The idea of being able to rent your own moving truck and then easily hire people to help you fill it was a new one. People would go to Craigslist to hire workers or drop by Home Depot and pick up day laborers. The website, though, made hiring a moving helper much easier. Folks can use the site to easily compare prices and hire people to move them. It was like being able to call up your friends to come help you move, even if you don't have any friends. Hire a Helper called this emerging market the hybrid move, and they wanted hireahelper.com to be one of the first, best websites to help people do it. When they launched in June of 2007, they got a lot of attention.
A new way to move your stuff. A new trend catching on big time. It's called the hybrid move. Hybrid movers.
Hybrid.
A combination of do-it-yourself and a full-service move.
You rent your own truck and hire your labor through Hire a Helper.
Anyone who lives in the United States can use the website. The idea caught on quickly, and Hire a Helper has been growing every year since its launch. But the company was hit with a massive trademark infringement lawsuit early on. Legal fees nearly brought the business down. But they made it through, barely. And now the company pulls in nearly $8 million in annual revenue.
You will save thousands of dollars doing it this way.
And you don't load or unload.
They unpacked, they unloaded, they put beds together, they did I didn't do a thing.
Mike Glanz is one of those rare San Diego natives. He grew up in Bay Park and graduated from Claremont High School. He didn't go far for college. He went to Riverside, to a small college where he studied computer science. He knew early on that he wanted to be a web entrepreneur. Right out of college, he got a job programming at a software development company, and it was there that he started coming up with ideas for web-based businesses.
I had tried to start a online forum / group for people who wanted to find poker home games called seniorstacks.com. So embarrassing talking about it now. And so that was probably the first idea that I ever had. We made a app back before apps were a thing, but it was just like a web app that called Lunch Run 3000, where you could actually it would select where you were going for lunch for you in your office. Everyone would put in like, I want healthy and I don't want to spend more than $15, and then it would randomize whatever selections matched up.
That's not a bad idea. Maybe just a little ahead of its time, huh?
It was, because there's actually tons of apps now that probably actually make money that do the same thing.
Totally.
But we had built that back in 2005 or something, but never really promoted it or anything. And then my first probably bigger app that actually got a lot of traction was oh man, I'm spacing on the name. You Got Comments. So if you'll remember, back in the day, you used to get email notifications from MySpace that would say, "You got comments." That was their little phrase. So I'd actually registered the domain You Got Comments, and I built an application that would scan your MySpace page and text message you when you had comments from MySpace. So this was before the iPhone. So
yeah, people were still using like their flip phones at that point,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. So the idea of notifications on your phone that something was happening on the internet was kind of unknown, and we had built this thing, and actually got a couple thousand users on it, and before we eventually realized that it didn't make any money, and kind of gave up on it, which is probably a good thing, because with the advent of the iPhone and apps and everything, and the downfall of MySpace, probably wasn't destined to really go anywhere. But those were kind of the false starts I had that were fun, that I'd built while in school or early after.
Just a few months into his job as a programmer, Mike realized that his personal technical skills weren't going to get him very far.
It started becoming very obvious that I was nowhere near as good a programmer as I was entrepreneur. Had a lot of ideas, knew how to execute, knew how to get stuff done, but just was definitely never going to be a good programmer.
So he started looking around for a solid web business he could help build. At his college in Riverside, Mike met Pete Johnson. Pete was a roommate, and the two played basketball and poker together. Pete also ran a small moving labor company during his time in college, making about $25 an hour to help people load up their rented moving trucks. Eventually, the seed for Hire a Helper was planted.
So he had kind of started this little moving labor business, and we started talking about making a marketplace for these moving labor companies. We felt like the hybrid move, this, you get the truck and we'll provide the guys, this whole notion of the a la carte move was up and coming. It was interesting to see people who were middle class, who had never used movers before, now hiring movers and the truck, because it wasn't $3,000 for movers. It was, $100 for the truck and $200 for movers. And you were getting this full service move at a much more affordable price. And we felt like that was kind of going to be a thing. And we wanted to bet on it. We felt like if we can make a marketplace where all of these hybrid moving companies were, instead of people having to go to Craigslist and everything, that we could help propagate this idea of the hybrid move faster, and hopefully make a little bit of money off of it. And so partially because he was in the moving labor already, and partially because he was one of the few college students I know who had a few $1,000 extra, and that was needed. I asked him if he'd invest and kind of start this thing with me. And he said yes. I don't know why, but I'm glad he did. When we started, we did labor only, and we did not focus on the transportation. Our premise and philosophy behind the hybrid move, and what we had seen starting to take place on open marketplaces like Craigslist, was that the idea of the rental truck in the United States is pervasive, and it is part of our culture and our identity as Americans. This is how we move. We rent a truck, we buy people pizza and beer, and we move ourselves, and we do not spend $3,000 to move across town. And that doesn't exist in every other country of the world. It's very much an American thing. And what we had started to see happen was that people still didn't want to pay for professional movers. They still owned a lot of things, but they weren't they weren't happy with this loading part. And that's what we kind of stumbled upon. What these early adopters of the hybrid move had figured out via Craigslist or, going to Home Depot and picking up day laborers or whatever. They had found that, hey, I can get the rental truck and I can get the labor and I could put this thing together myself. And I can make the move that I want it to be. That's easy, where I don't have to do a lot of work, and it has the benefits of being affordable. And so we really latched on to that idea, and we labeled it the hybrid move. And we went out there and we started spreading the gospel, saying, look, this is the way that you should move. You should go get your own truck, go to Penske, Budget, U-Haul, whoever, get a truck, and then come to us and we'll provide the labor and we'll get this whole thing done for you for under $500.
Hire a Helper didn't create the more affordable labor-only moving industry. The website just brought it all together. To build up their cachet of professional movers, they did a lot of cold calling, like a whole lot. And they weeded out the workers who didn't do a good job, focused on the ones who did, and tried to get them to agree to be available to help through the Hire a Helper website.
We had stumbled upon the start of this industry where we started finding other companies who were doing what Pete had done, who had gone out there and who had started advertising themselves on Craigslist or wherever at local storage facilities or apartment complexes, and were advertising themselves as doing this. Oh, we'll help you load your truck. We'll help you unload your truck. So the companies existed. So we were really fortunate in that sense. It wasn't necessarily like Uber where they were going out there and trying to find all these, unskilled
individuals,
individuals to do it. We started doing both, recruiting companies and individuals. We found out really quickly that it's very, very different than an Uber driver. People do not want inexperienced movers. They do not want college students moving their stuff. 9 out of 10 people do not want a college student moving their stuff. They might think that's a great idea, but they don't really want. It's a skilled job. You have to load a lot of heavy, fragile items into something, and it's all of your possessions are coming into your house, and you want them to take it seriously and move your life from one place to another, and you don't want things broken. So we quickly gave up on the college students idea. There was not good satisfaction with them, and we focused on finding companies where they were at, whether they were advertising on Craigslist or whether they were full service moving companies who had a labor only division. And we had to get creative, and we found the guys who were performing and tried to sign them up.
In the early days of Hire a Helper, it was just Mike and one other employee. Pete kept his day job and just planned on being a financial investor.
First he gave me a couple $1,000s, and I built a prototype and worked with some outsourcers to do some of the parts of the programming I couldn't do. I think I mentioned I wasn't the greatest programmer, so I didn't trust myself to do things like credit card processing and stuff. And that got done, and then we sat for 2 or 3 months and waited. And I was like, did I make a mistake? Did I just waste $3,000 of this guy's money to build this site that's just sitting there doing nothing? And 3 months later, then I was like, I get another little spurt of energy and go make a little bit more progress and a little bit more progress. And everything said and done, it was probably from the time he actually gave me the money and we built the prototype to the time we actually launched the website, it was probably a year. And over that course of the year, there wasn't a ton of work that happened. It wasn't like I quit my job day one and started doing it. It was over the course of a year where it got to the point where it was like, okay, well, this is actually functioning well enough now that I could actually make this a job. It doesn't make any money, but I could launch this and we could try it out. And so that, that happened June 1st of 2007. And that was probably the big day where it became the most real.
Mike realized he needed to take the leap and make Hire a Helper his full-time day job if they wanted it to succeed. It meant giving up his cushy day job as a programmer and telling his wife that he'd be taking a big financial risk. In 2007, it was a different world back then when it came to the web. Not many people were tech savvy yet, and the idea of putting your personal credit card information into a website to hire workers you've never met still freaked a lot of people out.
First of all, the iPhone didn't exist. So in general, we told people that people were going to spend $300 to book services online, and people laughed at us. No one believed that anyone would do that. Totally different, consumer atmosphere than it is today. Now it's just an assumed thing.
Mike did the rounds in Silicon Valley and looked for investors. He hit up venture capitalists in San Diego too. But he heard the same thing over and over and over again, which was that moving is boring. And the investors at the time just didn't see enough consumers being willing to use their credit card and spend a few $100s on the internet. The rejection didn't faze Mike too much, though, mostly because he knew how badly moving sucks. He knew the market was there, he knew the need was there, and the service Hire a Helper was offering was valuable. So he did it. He gave up his cushy six-figure job in software development and went all in on a website that had yet to make any money.
I wasn't going to go without a paycheck. I couldn't jump off the cliff and just hope to fly. So we went around and asked friends and family for money to give us some kind of runway. And we were really lucky to pull together $150,000 from friends and family.
Wow.
So all based in San Diego. So angel investors gave us the money. And we figured with that we'd have operating costs for 18 months, depending on how sales went. And that would give us enough runway to get going. So that was probably the first start, and that was definitely needed. I don't think that there was a way that we were going to make that leap with the amount of student loans we had and where we were financially at the time. With my wife's a nurse, and she was just out of nursing school, so she had a good first job, but probably not enough money to pay all of our student loans and support us both. So being able to start off with $15 an hour at least as a starting salary, made a big difference in the ability to do that. So I was really fortunate in that sense to be able to pull in the startup capital to help with that.
Just 10 days into it, Mike realized he needed more help. He decided he needed Pete as more than just a hands-off financial investor.
This was way more work than I would be able to handle on my own. Pete was doing something right out of school, and I went to him and I said, look, you're not even making that much money. Why don't you just, you might make the difference here. So why don't you just stop what you're doing now, come make the same amount at Hire a Helper, and help me get this off the ground for a year. And let's give this a shot to actually work. And that was probably, we wouldn't have survived without him.
So Peter is the yin to Mike's yang. Mike's better at dreaming and envisioning the company's future. He's also good at sales, marketing, and long-term strategy stuff. But Peter was better at the more practical things that needed to get done. It wasn't until Pete agreed to quit his job and join the startup that the business started taking off. Pete cold called thousands of moving companies across the country and got a huge amount of service providers to sign up to offer moving labor. Mike focused on getting people who were looking for moving help to find the website.
And so I just started with what I knew. I knew how to give us an online presence. I knew how to rank for Google. I knew how to build links and develop a web presence. And so we started with that. Every time we'd venture into some sort of traditional advertising via radio or video ads or anything like that, we just weren't successful at it. So we just kind of naturally fell into more of a grassroots online, social media and search engine optimization marketing style. And then, Pete's dad was an electrician. My dad was a painter. And then we had this just really, really backwards idea that if we just provided a really good service and made customers happy, that they would tell other people about it, and then we wouldn't have to continue to pay for marketing. And so that's worked out really well for us.
How did you position yourself early on as the place to go? You know, I'm sure people still maybe go to Craigslist for this, but that was probably your main competition in the beginning, right? So how did you define yourself as a better choice?
The problem with where these early adopters were going, and there's a number of places, not just Craigslist or the Home Depot.
Mm-hmm.
There were actually other websites out there that were trying to do the same thing, but the issue that we saw with them is that they weren't leveraging the power of the marketplace, and the power of the marketplace is really found in facilitating a safe transaction. And we were looking at the problem with these transactions that were occurring in these other natural marketplaces, and there's no insurance, there's no guarantee. There was really no value. They were trying to put people together without providing the value. And so our position has always been that you can get the benefits of this hybrid move, and you don't have to sacrifice the best parts of the expensive full service move. So we created the first of its kind insurance on hybrid moving.
Oh.
It actually was not a type of insurance that existed. So we actually had to find an insurance company and create an insurance from scratch where we could actually insure labor-only movers who weren't providing the truck, so that people who were hiring hybrid movers through us would have insurance on it too.
And it's important, just so people understand, it's important because if you hire someone and they get hurt while they're working for you, you could potentially be on the hook. Is that why insurance is so important?
There's a few reasons insurance is important. There's the kind of the workman's comp and the liability aspect of it. That's one aspect of it, but that's actually not the most common. 1/3 of moves result in damage claims. So the insurance that's the most important to consumers during the moving process is actually the cargo insurance. And the traditional moving industry has kind of had a lockdown on this cargo insurance where it hasn't been available in the past. It's only been available to these really expensive full service movers as part of their package. Mm-hmm. So we had to do that work and find someone who would back an insurance product where we can insure these labor only movers, even though the consumer a lot of times was going to drive the rental truck. So that was kind of the stickler. We had to go out there and we had to convince an insurance company that, hey, it's worth insuring these goods because we have professional movers and the homeowners are going to drive the truck, but the stuff's going to come out all right on the other end. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. It happened after tens of thousands of transactions and had gone through us, and we proved that the claims rate was low. So in fact, today our insurance rates are exceptional. We give it away for free as part of booking the move through us because we have less than 3% claims rate. So if you book a full service mover, pick any moving company off American Moving and Storage Association's website, book them, your chances of filing a claim for damaged or broken items after your move is 1 in 3. So about 30%. And via Hire Helper, it's less than 3%. So you're literally 10 times less likely to file a damage claim or have damaged items by doing this hybrid move. And we found that when the consumer has control over their own move, when they're selecting the service provider and they're driving the truck, that they're going to be more careful and their stuff's going to get taken care of better. And somehow they save money at the same time.
The Hire a Helper pricing model has changed several times over the years, but the service has always been free to the consumer. Mike and Pete make money by charging the service providers a % of the transaction. A year into the business, all the parts were in place. Mike and Pete buckled in and focused on growth. It was still just Mike and Pete and one employee, and by 2008, Hire a Helper was breaking even and growing pretty consistently. They were feeling really good and confident about the business. But then U-Haul stepped into the picture and served Hire a Helper with a lawsuit that nearly brought the company down. When we come back, how Hire a Helper fought the lawsuit and just barely managed to keep the business going.
This podcast is sponsored in part by a proud supporter of Monarch Schools and Make-A-Wish San Diego. Monarch School educates students impacted by homelessness and helps them develop hope for a future with the necessary skills and experience for personal success. Make-A-Wish San Diego grants wishes to children with life-threatening medical conditions to enrich the human experience with hope, strength, and joy. To learn more about how you can get involved, please visit monarchschools.org and sandiego.wish.org.
Hey, welcome back to I Made It in San Diego. I'm Kinsey Moreland. It was 2008, and U-Haul had seen the writing on the wall when it came to people who wanted to hire moving help without paying the high prices that come with hiring a full-service professional moving company. U-Haul started its own website that acted as a marketplace for moving laborers, and it saw Hire a Helper as a threat.
And they weren't happy. They claimed that a bunch of things, but the core of their lawsuit was that that the term moving help was trademarked, and that we were infringing on their trademark because we used the term moving help.
Like how used it in your marketing and advertising, or just used it?
Yeah, because we targeted it because we saw that people were searching for moving help.
Right.
And that's our labor providers provided moving help because they were people who helped with moving. And so we targeted it, and we didn't know it was a trademark. It wasn't. It was never malicious on our part or anything like that. We knew we competed with them, but if you had asked me,
broad conceptual term there. So
yeah. And I don't even know that I knew that they had it trademarked. But having been a business minor, I don't know that I would have, and having taken some intellectual property law, I don't know that I would have considered the fact that that was even a trademark term. It was, seems generic and descriptive. I mean, it can't be a trademark if it's descriptive.
Right.
So it led to a very long and expensive lawsuit.
When Mike and Pete first got served the lawsuit, the initial advice from their lawyers was not to worry too much about it. The lawyers assured them that U-Haul just wanted to protect its trademark terms and would eventually settle. So Mike and Pete quickly responded to the suit and told U-Haul they'd stop using the moving help term and pay the company a little bit of money to make the lawsuit go away. But that plan didn't pan out.
And then it became, I would say over the course of the next 3 to 6 months, it became apparent that they were not interested in settling. They were interested in not having competition. And so our initial settlement offer of to stop using the term and maybe give them a few dollars to leave us alone, they rejected. They ramped up really quickly. We thought we were good, sitting on $50,000 or $70,000 in the bank at the time. Mm-hmm. Legal bills ramped to $10,000 or $20,000 a month over the next 3 to 6 months. And it became very apparent that U-Haul, one, wasn't going to settle, two, they weren't going away. And then it, what was scarier to us was that how fast the money was disappearing. So, when we'd sit there and do projections on where we were going as a business, there wasn't a clear answer on what we needed to do. We didn't have they didn't give us an option to go away or to close up shop or to just quit. They seemed like they were out for blood. I don't know if, given 6 or 12 months into the trial, in this lawsuit, if they had said, hey, we'll let you go free and clear if you just go out of business and leave us alone. I don't know if we would have taken that or not. We were terrified. But we were never given that opportunity. So we have to pay legal fees to defend ourselves. Otherwise, they're going to impact my earnings for the rest of my life after this business exists. So we sat there, and it forced Pete and me to figure out how we were going to pay the bills, how we were going to fight the lawsuit. And we were confident if it went to trial that we would be fine. We felt very confident in the merits of our case. If we could just survive the legal fees, we knew we'd be okay.
So how did you survive those legal fees? Did you go back to your friends and family and get more investment, or?
No, we did an analysis. We sat there and we looked at, we have $30,000. I don't know what the numbers are, but we have $30,000 in the bank account, and we have $80,000 in legal fees coming up in the next year. So we need to make $30,000 into $80,000. How are we going to do that? And the obvious answer was to grow the business. So rather than conserve that $30,000 and try and spend it on legal fees as frugally as we can, we worked harder at the business, and we spent that $30,000 trying to turn that $30,000 into enough money to pay the legal fees on an ongoing basis. And we did that for 3 years. It was close. There were months that, where we had less than $10,000 in the bank account. We were just barely making the legal fees. For a period of time, neither Pete or I took paychecks. There was a good 4 or 6 months where I would go from 5 a.m. till 2 p.m. and work another job, and then Pete and I would split that salary. So I'd work from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then and Pete would work the phones and work hire helper at the same time, and then I'd come in and work the afternoon shift. Pete would actually go to local San Diego casino, Ocean's 11 up in Oceanside, and he'd play 20-40 limit. And at the end of the month, we'd split his poker winnings and my salary, and we'd just survive on that. We were dying for a way out, and we were just never given it. So we were kind of forced to fight through and survive. I remember being in the hospital, down in Scripps, Encinitas, and during my daughter's birth, and just being overwhelmed with thoughts of the lawsuit and the company and how we were going to survive, and feeling, how unfair is that I can't even be enjoying this moment and this time when I should, remember for the rest of my life. All I remember of that day, I remember the birth, but the things that are most vivid to me are just like how much despair I had over the lawsuit, and being so mad that I was thinking about that, in the birthing room.
3 years and close to $500,000 later in legal fees, U-Haul did eventually agree to Mike and Pete's settlement offer. A huge weight was lifted off the business, and they could finally focus on the growth they'd been achieving, even while paying the hefty legal fees.
Once the lawsuit was behind us, we were super excited for all of that money we spent on legal fees to actually be going into growth and expansion. And towards the end of the lawsuit, we were actually, breaking even while paying the legal fees and paying ourselves. So all the legal fees disappearing to us was just this huge amount of opportunity, a huge weight lifted off of us. So it was really exciting time to begin to hire people. We hired 2 or 3 key positions within 6 months and really started to push to growth. It wasn't until then that the growth really, percentage-wise, was similar prior to then, but ever since then we've maintained that 40 to 60% year-over-year growth. And it's just gotten, we've been able to maintain that since the lawsuit. So it's been more exciting, I would say, every year since then.
In 2017, Hire a Helper facilitated over 65,000 moves across the country, totaling about 20 million in gross transactions. Hire a Helper now employs almost 50 people, and their office takes up 20,000 square feet in an office building in downtown Oceanside. The office is hip. It's what you picture when you imagine the workspace of cool young tech companies. There are Xboxes, staffers can take naps on a collection of giant beanbag-like blow-up chairs. Everyone wears t-shirts and jeans. Hire a Helper employees get an unlimited amount of PTO, and the company is known to hire people right out of high school as long as they have the technical chops needed. Mike says things are good. The biggest challenge now is keeping the growth rate cranking.
We've become addicted to this high growth model. We love, the big growth numbers, and the problem with measuring success on a percentage growth basis is that it gets harder every year. So we did, 40,000 transactions in 2016 and 65,000 transactions in 2017. So 50% year over year is great, but to do 50% next year, that means we have to add 32,000 transactions. So, coming up with a plan to grow, the business by 30,000 transactions, that's the equivalent of growing to the size we were after 5 years in business, and we have to do all that next year. But it's fun. I love those challenges.
And so you're okay, in the Silicon Valley tech world, like lifestyle company is a bad thing for certain people. Like it seems like that's what you built. You built a company that, it's good enough for you. It's good enough for your partner. It's great for the 40 plus people that you employ. But you're not Netflix, but you're okay with that? Or do you feel like you are Netflix?
Well, we're not Netflix yet. We're not in it to be a lifestyle company.
Okay.
We're in it to take over the industry. We are convinced that the evolution of the American move, of the people renting the truck and doing it themselves with pizza and beer, is going to be people renting the truck or storage containers is kind of a big part of that that's come into play in the last couple of years, and pushing a button on an app and having a couple guys come out and do it for you. My absolute favorite customer testimonials of all time. We've seen we have some really amazing video shots of actual customers sitting there and drinking wine while their stuff is being moved. And I think that's the future.
Thanks for listening to I Made It in San Diego. I wrote and edited the show, Scott Lewis produced it, and Adam Greenfield mastered and mixed it. Visit voiceofsandiego.org/podcast to learn more about our weekly Voice of San Diego political affairs show, our Good Schools for All education podcast, the Kept Faith Sports podcast, Beer Talk Radio, and all the shows in the Voice of San Diego podcast network. If you like the show, consider going on over to voiceofsandiego.org and clicking the donate button. Or if you'd like to sponsor it, contact me at KINSEE@VOSD.org.